Hi, this is Kat with Beadaholique, and in this video I'm going to show you how to do a Wrapit Loom bracelet with Czech glass SuperDuo beads. Now these are 2-hole beads, and you can see how just nice and tight they line up here on that Wrapit Loom. And I'm going to show you this particular technique here today. Now this is a really simple chevron striped pattern, so you can do this pattern or feel free to make it your own. So this is what we're going to be doing here. And I want to start by saying that I used a bead mix to create this. And this is actually the leftover beads that I have. So you can just see how many beads I used, and that's just up here. But when you're choosing your mix, there's a couple of things you want to consider. Now I have a huge range here of our lovely mixes, and what's great is you can choose a couple and mix and match. So if you're not quite sure what colors you want to use, go ahead and grab one. There's this great mix here that has a lot of metallics to it, so if you wanted to just pull the gold beads or the bronze beads out of there and then mix it with another one, you have the opportunity to do that. Now some of these mixes do have some more clear beads, so you'll be able to see that thread path going through. So you can either swap those out, or you can use those if that's part of your design. You'll be able to kind of see just how that works when you have some of the different colors of beads here. All right, so those are the mixes. Now I did bring out another mix, and the mix that I'm going to be using here is the Jasper mix. Now this is the whole tube of beads right here, and I've separated them out by color because I wanted to see how many I had of each color. So that's another thing to note, is when you have your mixes, it's not always going to be completely even. So for this one, I have 6 different colors. And what I wanted to do is I wanted to separate them. You can see that I have some shiny, some that are a little bit more of that pearlized, some are kind of a little bit more of a matte finish. So I wanted to separate those out so that I could choose my pattern, and I think I've put these in the pattern that I want. And I'm, again, just going to do that simple chevron. So let me just go ahead and pull these all out, just one at a time. And there we go. And one more over here. So I've alternated my reds, and I have this nice little clay color, because don't forget this one is going to loop around and touch this bronze over here, so that's a nice sort of shiny next to a matte. So I wanted to kind of vary that up in here as well, so I have some different finishes. So this is the pattern I'm going to go with, and the reason I wanted to do that is for a couple of reasons. So the one that I have the least amount of beads for is this brown bead down here. And you can just kind of see my piles. You can see that this guy's the smallest. So what I made sure to do was, looking at my original pattern here, the one I had the least of are those light blue aqua beads here. So you can see that there's 5 per chevron, per arrow there. So I did 5, 10, 15, 20, 25. So I know that I at least need 25, if not 30, if I wanted to extend this a little bit further. But for my bracelet here, this is going to give you a 6.5-inch bracelet. So just to give you a little bit of sort of knowledge there about your sizing. And the other thing you can do is, instead of having just the 2 knots here, you can add a 3rd knot, and that will allow you to give another little position for your, for your button there. So if you needed to just sort of extend it that way without adding any weaving, you'll see that we'll have some extra leather cord. All right, so lots of information about sizing. I'll kind of go over that as we're working here, but we're going to be using some size 2 of the Griffin silk. I have some 1.5 millimeter round leather cord. I have my little button, and inside that button fits a nice little Swarovski crystal. This is stone size 34. And then for tools, we're going to be using our fine, flexible, twisted wire beading needles. I have some GS Hypo cement. I have just some snips. You can also just use a pair of scissors if you like. And I have a pair of bent nose tweezers. I think these are actually really going to come in handy. Sometimes you're going to see that those beads get really nice and tight, so this is a good little tool to have on hand. And then of course we have our Wrapit Loom. Now I've set up mine here. If you need a refresher on how to set it up, you can look at the instructions that come with it, or we also do have a video walking you from start to finish on how to set up your loom. All right, but I'm going to kind of dive right in. I know we're eager to get beading, and you guys want to see how this is done. So let's start, and I'm going to set aside my little crystal there. We're going to glue him in a little bit later, but let's go ahead and take our leather cord. Now I have a yard of the leather, and I'm just going to slip on my shank here and bring that all the way down to the center. So I have it folded in half, and I have my button in the center. And now we're just going to take both ends there, bring them together, and we're just going to tie an overhand knot. So just over, and I'm going to take those two ends and put them through. Very simple. And now we want to make sure that knot is nice and close to that button. So I'm just kind of scooching it down with my fingers. There we go. All right. So just like so. So that's just a nice little overhand knot to get us started. All right. And I'm just kind of pushing it down there towards the end, making sure it's nice and secure. All right. So now to get to the second knot here, and like I said, I'm just going to demonstrate that you're going to do a 6.5 inch bracelet. So when you look at this, you'll notice that the knots are now just under 6 inches, because what happens is that leather spreads apart. So we want to make sure that our second knot that we're going to tie is at least 6.5 inches down here. And again, you know, you can redo this knot, and there's lots of sizing options in terms of where your button is going to fall, but I'm just going to try to just eyeball this here and get it to that point. There we go. And scooch it down. And that was a little far away, so I'm going to try to scooch it a little bit closer. I'm just going to loosen that knot just a little bit. And scooch it down. And that's much better. All right, so yeah, so there we go. So now I'm at about 6.5 inches knot to knot. All right, so that is going to be good to start. And then I'm just going to move down about 1 inch and tie another overhand knot. And this is going to be that first knot there that is going to allow our little button shank to sit in there. So you can also bring your button over here and just kind of eyeball that it'll fit through there and tighten up that knot. All right, so you do have extra leather, which is why I'm saying you can tie additional knots if you want to. You can just leave it like this for now until you've decided that you've gotten that far. So now we are all set to go ahead and put it into our loom here. And we're just gonna kind of open the jaws here and set our little button inside. And then come back here to this side, set it into our loom between the first and the second knot. And let me try to show this on the side there. So it's between the first and the second knot there, because we want to pull it back, and you just pull it until it clicks and you have some nice tension there. All right, so next let's go ahead and remove our Griffin silk from the card. And it does have one twisted wire needle attached to it, so we'll just need one more from our package here. And go ahead and take that all off the card. Now don't worry about the fact that it might be a little kinked from being on the card. That'll all work itself out here. All right, so I have my twisted wire needle, so I'm just going to take one out of my package. And it has a nice little eye there. And I'm just going to slip it onto the other side here. And it looks like that got separated, so there we go. Much easier to thread that on. All right, and go ahead and you can put that down a few inches there. All right, so now what we want to do is we want to take the ends of our cord and we want to find our midpoint here. And now I have my midpoint, so I'm going to take it and put it on both sides, just like so, right across the top there. And then I'm going to take one side, loop it down and around, and pull that all the way through and out. And take this side and loop it down and through and all the way out. All right, so now this is what we have. It's laying across the top and then through the center there. And I'm just going to kind of scooch that up. I want to get that as close to the knot as I possibly can because we want to kind of hide it in there. And then I'm going to come to my right side needle here. And I'm going to leave my little pattern kind of set there for me to look at. I'm going to go through one hole of the SuperDuo, string through, crisscross that over to the side, and then I'm going to come in with the other needle going through the opposite direction to finish that crisscross. So I've brought both of my cords here. And now this is going to sit in the center there. Now these first couple are going to be a little tight because what we're doing is we're kind of opening up that leather. So just go ahead and make sure that he sits right up close there, nice and tight. So then we're just going to repeat that process. We're going to go down through the center with one cord and down through the center with the second cord. And next what we're going to do is we're going to pick up one of the very same color there, go through one hole, and then we're going to come with our needle and go through the second hole of that second bead, or I'm sorry, of that first bead there. And then before we finish off, we're going to come in and we need to add on one hole of another SuperDuo in that same color. So just like so, right? Okay, so now I'm going to pull this cord all the way through to the other side. There we go. Making sure to not get it caught on anything. Come on. There we go. All right, so now I'm going to come back with the other needle here. And this is probably one of the hardest rows to do. I'm actually going to release a little bit of tension on mine so that I can allow that to open up a little bit more. All right, so now I'm going to go through that first hole there on that last bead that I added, kind of bring that through. Go ahead and pull that. Now I'm just going to let that kind of sit down there as I go through the second hole of that center one. There we go. And finally, I'm taking it and I'm going through that first hole of that third bead there. So I'm just crisscrossing. So if you're just paying attention to the rows, you're just going right through the center there. All right, so now I'm going to pull both cords here and we're going to kind of watch that kind of sit right in there. All right, so you can see now that we have our little sort of trio happening there. Again, just sort of wiggling your cords around, making sure they're nice and taut. All right, so we're ready to do it all again. So go down and around, and down and around. All right, now in order to continue our pattern with that chevron, I'm going to pick up one more of our same color bead here, and go ahead and let that fall down. And then I'm going to pick up the next row that I want, which is going to be this sort of pearly bronze color here. So I'm going to pick up one hole of that guy. Oops, I stand corrected, excuse me. So before I pick up this other one, I need to go through this hole here, but only that first one. Okay, so there we go. Sorry about that, guys. All right, so now we're going to go through our next color. And then we're going to go through the second one here, making sure that it all stays on top there. And then we're going to go through one more of our original color here. All right, so now we're going to pull that through and crisscross it to the other side there. And then we're going to come in with our other cord here and go back through that entire row. So as long as you're just paying attention to the holes and paying attention to your colors, you'll know pretty quickly if you've missed a step or if you've skipped over a bead. It'll be pretty apparent for you. All right, and also at this point you're just kind of following through that whole little section of beads you just strung. And you can kind of see that I'm threading on one at a time. The twisted wire needles, you know, they just need a little extra love to kind of go through some of these beads because it gets very tight, but I love them because the result is really nice. And also if you need to bend the tip of the twisted wire needle, you can do that to kind of like hook through some of the beads, because you want to make sure that your needle and your cord is staying on top of the leather cord. All right, so I'm just going to tighten that up. There we go. And now slip that through this last cord over here. And after this row, it'll start to get much easier because we'll have a little bit more structure. Okay. Alrighty, so now I'm going to pull this guy all the way through here. And then I'll get my hands out of the way so you can kind of see, and I'll walk you through it one more time. All right, so now we can kind of see what's happening there. So we laid it across the top, wrapped it around, went through the first hole of this bead, crisscrossing, then we did our wrap again, and then we went through the first hole, the second hole, and the first hole, making that line across, wrapped it around again, and then now we're starting our second color, so we're taking 3. So now what we're going to alternate and we're going to do is we're going to do 2 and 3. So you'll notice that you'll be adding 2 and then adding 3. Oops. And this is where we just want to keep that tension nice and tight. It will eventually open up, and you can also release a little bit of your tension here if you need to let it do its own little thing there. All right, so one more time, and this one's going to be a little bit different too. So we're going to go down and around. Just make sure that you're always wrapping around your leather first. It's always a good first step. Just make sure that that's how you're starting. So now what I want to do is I want to take this needle and I'm going to go through the first bead there, and only the first bead. And I'm going to pull that nice and tight. And now I'm going to pick up that second color there that I've chosen, which is this sort of pearly burnt orange. Pick up one, go through that center one. There we go. Then I'm going to pick up one more. And now you're going to go through that last bead, and again, staying on top of your leather. Don't let it dip below, because then you'll get all twisted. And we're going to pull that through. So you can kind of see now what's happening there. All right, and we've gone through, and this is our other cord. And I'm just going to kind of help this up a little bit. There we go. All right, so just going all the way back through. And you might be able to get 2 beads at one time. Don't worry if you can't. There we go. All right, now I'm going to turn this a little bit to the side so I can kind of start to work with my needle and get it through there. And see, that one I went through too. So that was nice and helpful. All right, and just getting my needle through, going through that first bead there. And I'm just straightening out that needle. There we go. And that went through the second one too. All right, so just all the way across there and down and around. All right, so now I'm just gonna kind of just take a look here and just adjust any cords that need tightening on the outside, because you kind of have to do this at this stage before you continue on. All right, so that's pretty much it. So you just keep going down and around and keep going through there, and it will gain its structure. I'll come back and show you what it looks like when we are all the way towards the end, and then I'll show you how to taper it off, and then we're gonna finish it. So just keep on going, just wrapping around and going through those 2 whole beads. So as you can see, I've done most of my weaving here, and I'm just getting down towards that little tip there. So let me just kind of flip this up so you guys can sort of see. So you could, you might be able to squeeze an extra row in there. You just kind of have to decide. Now, one thing I will say is that I actually ended up doing more rows here. So I actually moved my knot up so I would stop doing rows. So you can actually take this off, and if you need to take it off, you can just kind of kick that back, slide the knot out and the back side here, and sort of redo that knot, readjust it. So if you notice that you're getting either too far, maybe you put the knot there, you can just kind of undo that and just retie it. All right, so I am happy with the way this is looking. So let me just kind of reset up my loom here so I can finish it off. And I will say that, you know, as I'm talking about sizing here, the best way to adjust it once you're done is to add extra knots in the leather so that you can extend it, because you do, and you can see here I have about 6 to 8 inches or so left of each side of my Griffin silk. So you can do a few more rows. It just starts to get a little tight. So just be aware of that as well. If you wanted to do like another 10 rows, just be mindful of the amount of the silk that you do have. All right, so I've taken it, I finished that last row there and I've gone down and around and through. And now instead of adding an extra bead to this side, we're just going to taper it and I'm just going to go straight through that first bead. And then I'm going to only pick up one bead. So instead of picking up that row of 3, I'm just going to what that next color would be. And for me, it's going to be that shiny bronze. And then I'm going through the second side there. And out. There we go. And then I'm going to take this side and just go straight through all of those holes that I just went through. So the bottom one there, and let's see if I can do this all in one step. I might not be able to. And okay, so I went through the bottom one and then the top of that bronze. And now I just need to bring my needle back and put it through there. As you're going, you can kind of curl that needle. Sometimes it might help. Just sort of scoop it down through that hole. There we go. All right, so give it a nice little tug, and you can see that's going to sit very nicely in there. So I'm just going to take both of those and go around that leather one more time. So down and out and through. And again, down and out and through. It gets a little tight in there. There we go. And now the last thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through that bronze bead, crisscrossing just as we did with our very first bead here. And this is going to nicely anchor it into that little arrow that's right there. All right. And here's where those tweezers can come in handy for you. There we go. All right. And one more time, taking our needle, and we're going to go down and through and out and down and through and out. There we go. All right. So now, very simply, we're going to do just like what we did on the beginning side. We're going to do a nice little overhand knot and bring that down, pull it tight, and do one more overhand knot. Again, give it a nice tug. And since this is our very last knot, I'm going to go for one more. I want to make sure. And you can see that that little knot is not too big. He's just going to sit nicely in there. So now you're done with all of your weaving. The next part we're going to do is we are going to take our glue, our GS Hypo cement, and I am just going to add a little dab of glue onto that silk there. All right. And you can also use E6000 for this. I like using the GS Hypo cement. I think it just really bonds nicely to the silk. All right, so we're going to leave that. I'm going to kind of remove it though. For the purposes of my video, I'd say go ahead and leave it there for maybe 15-20 minutes before you move on to this next little step. All right, so the last thing we're going to do is I'm going to let that dry before I trim the ends. But I want to add my little crystal to my button. So again, we're going to use some of that GS Hypo cement. And we're just going to fill in that button there, just right in the center because it'll kind of smush itself out. There we go, adding a nice dollop of glue. And then I'm actually going to use my tweezers here to help me. So I can simply place it, oh, there we go, flip, and center that right into my button there. There we go. I'm just going to press it down and hold it for a minute. And then this I would definitely let dry for at least 24 hours before you wear it. Otherwise you might end up losing your crystal and we don't want that to happen. Oops, sorry, I'm just trying to put my glue away so that doesn't dry out. There we go, set that aside. All right, so now I'm going to move to this side. I've let that dry for a few minutes here. I'm going to trim those. And again, you can see how little silk you really do have left over. And then I'm going to go ahead and trim my leather because I know this is the size that I want. So I'm going to come about an inch or so, 3/4 of an inch down, and just trim off that extra leather. So you do have extra leather to make those knots if you needed to make a couple additional knots there. And then you also do have all of these extra beads. Now you can actually see that I used mostly the bronze ones here. And unlike this one where I did 5 colors, in this one down here, it's actually, I ended up using all 6 to create my little pattern. But you don't have to, you can mix and match, you can alternate. It's just dependent on how many rows you're gonna want and how long you're gonna want your bracelet. But I recommend somewhere between 23 to 25 rows, but you can go ahead and decide that for yourself. So this is it. This is all finished. I'm definitely going to let that dry before wearing it, but that is how you make a Wrapit Loom bracelet using the Czech glass SuperDuos. So choose your favorite mix color and happy beading. Thanks for watching, guys. If you're new to our channel, be sure to hit that subscribe button below. And of course, you can get all of these supplies and tools by heading over to Beadaholique.com.